Hello, and welcome back to another installment of my fashion history series. Today we will be looking at the master of couture, Manfred Thierry Mugler. Sadly, Manfred passed away on January 23rd, the day before I'm recording this and the day after I finished writing my script for this video. I hope this can be a form of celebration and his achievements, and show you all how he inspired the fashion world forever. I'm going to break this down into the man's life and story, and then showcase some of the most important runways and moments throughout his career. Today, I'm actually wearing a Mugler jacket from the 90s, and it's one of my favorite pieces in my collection. Manfred was born on December 21st, 1948 in Strasbourg, France, near the German border. He was classically trained in dance, and from the age of 9, he joined the Opéra National du Rhin, or the National Opera of the Rhine, at the age of 14 as a ballet dancer. He was a professional dancer for 6 years and actually studied interior design at the Strasbourg School of Decorative Arts. Sometime in his early 20s, he moved to Paris and began working for different boutiques as a freelance designer. His time dancing had a profound impact on him, and he has always translated his passions and obsessions through the clothing he later designed. He described this early time in his life as incredibly lonely. He said, "When I started dancing, it was an opener. It was an incredible, fantastic help because it was a magical stage. The theater was made for me, but after the beauty of the light, the red curtain and applause, everyone had someone to wait for them backstage, but me, never. I had years and years when I was alone." Thankfully, he redirected that loneliness into some of the most incredible clothes the world has ever seen. In 1973, at the age of 25, he launched his first personal clothing collection titled Café de Paris. Soon after, Azzedine Alaïa joined him and they designed together for a few years before Mugler started his own label and they went their separate ways. This first collection worked on the wide shoulder silhouettes that were popular of the era, and he made them sophisticated, youthful, urban, and contemporary. His talent was showcased by French fashion editor Melchior Trenton in 1976 when Mugler was asked to show his work in window displays for the Japanese cosmetics brand Shiseido. 2 years later, he opened his first boutique in Paris, and his collection in 1978 was very well received. He was still focusing on broad shoulders then, and New York Magazine labeled the designs coming out of Paris in the spring as 1930s Flash Gordon fascist chic, alongside Claude Montana and French André. Mugler was part of a new and exciting avant-garde wave in France. He started a line for men, and in those first few years he made clothes based on triangles and spirals and shot himself towards international fame. The 1980s was Mugler's decade. Him, Alaïa, Claude Montana, and Jean-Paul Gaultier became fashion superstars. In Vogue's History of 20th Century Fashion, Jane Mouvog says, like Gaultier and Montana, Mugler married couture traditions with cult dressing. Cult dressing and over-the-top extravagant shows defined Mugler's success. He always said fashion is a spectacle and would present some of his collections in literal arenas for thousands to see live. His individual collections were often themed and included jaw-dropping concepts like cowboys, vampires, aliens, animals, robots, aquatics, and more. In 1986, Mugler was successful enough to buy out the initial investors of his company and obtain full ownership and control for some time. Mugler was a photographer as well and came out with a book on his photos in 1988 titled Thierry Mugler, Photographer. He was known to shoot his own advertising campaigns in exotic locations as well. The Chambre Syndicale de la Haute Couture asked him to present his first haute couture collection in 1992. Mugler said of the show, "The idea is to show my most personal things, something inventive and forward-looking." Mugler said Monday, confirming the move, "I have the feeling that I have already been doing couture. With all the research I put into my cut, my couture won't be about embroidery, but it will be equally for Madame Mitterrand or Michael Jackson." He continued to design into the early 2000s and collected a wide range of muses, including, but certainly not limited to, Liza Minnelli, David Bowie, Demi Moore, especially in Indecent Proposal, Celine Dion, George Michael, and of course the supermodels of the era, including the likes of Cindy Crawford and Naomi Campbell. That same year, in 1992, Mugler came out with his first perfume, Angel. The fragrance is now one of the best-selling in the world and has notes of praline, chocolate, honey, and patchouli. The Angel bottle is in the shape of a star and harkens back to Mugler's days as a dancer. Suzy Menkes wrote for Vogue, I remember so clearly a conversation with Thierry Mugler in the 90s when he told me that his first fragrance, Angel, with its faceted bottle of an exploding star, came directly from his personal turmoil as a young gay man, too guilty to go to the cathedral in Strasbourg and instead lying on a bench outside, looking up at the stars that would become a symbol of his lifelong work. Thankfully, fragrances became very important financially to the company as they sold well and had high profit margins. In 1996, a new cologne, Angel Men, was released, and in 2005, the perfume Alien was released as well. In 2019, all Mugler fragrances created over $750 million in sales. In 1997, Clarins, the cosmetics brand, obtained the rights to Mugler's name, and then Thierry Mugler left fashion in 2002. In 2003, due to financial losses, the ready-to-wear lines of Mugler were ended. The man then underwent a dramatic cosmetic transformation and turned to bodybuilding. He became almost unrecognizable from his younger self. He was quoted saying, "The physical mutation was a sort of return to myself, a repairing and reconstruction too." Around this time, he started referring to himself as Manfred, his given first name, instead of Thierry Mugler, which was stitched into almost all of the garments he created over the previous 3 decades. In a separate interview for his first big museum collection in Montreal, the curator said, "He told me that after he left the fashion industry, it annoyed him when people recognized him. He felt Thierry Mugler was a label, a brand. He wanted to move on to other things." After his departure, he still went on to design fragrances, as I've talked about, and he did some freelance work, like designing for Beyoncé's I Am World Tour in 2009. The Mugler label has recently come back into the spotlight, as Casey Cadwallader was appointed creative director in 2018. He has reworked some of those geometric suits and also done a lot of work with corsetry, sheer paneling, and bodycon dresses. The new designer's most recent pandemic runway videos have made a huge impact on the current fashion landscape. Now I'd like to discuss some of Manfred's greatest moments and achievements in his career. But first, we can talk about the Mugler I'm wearing right now. Unfortunately, I cannot find which collection this is from, but I would date it to around the early to mid 1990s, or possibly into the early 2000s. It's a black wool peplum jacket with a curved button closure. The jacket nips in to accentuate the waist, as is customary with a Mugler piece, and has raindrop zipper pulls to add some luxury touches. The jacket also has wide lapels to add a masculine touch and a non-functioning front pocket. I was lucky enough to find this for a steal at a consignment store here in Chicago, and I have a pickups video going into some more details that you can watch here. So, not much comes close to the ridiculous yet incredible runway of spring 1992. This collection featured some of Mugler's most famous ensembles, and the runway included the most fascinating of mixes, from the recently divorced Ivana Trump to supermodels, porn stars, and more. 2 looks from the show are of particular note, including the iconic red cowgirl outfit, complete with bedazzled leather chaps, bustier, hat, and fingerless gloves worn by Connie Fleming. This was look 79 of 84, all of which deserve a deep dive. Somehow, Mugler slipped in another timelessly funky outfit into the show with a motorcycle corset worn by supermodel Nikki Taylor. To quote an article from Elle, "Undoubtedly one of the most iconic pieces of the designer's full over is the Harley-Davidson corset he created for his spring-summer 1992 collection, which transformed woman into machine. In collaboration with renowned corset maker Mr. Pearl, Mugler created one of his most theatrical pieces, which you may recognize from Beyoncé's I Am World Tour back in 2009. It was seeing this piece at the Met Superheroes exhibition, the singer decided she had to collaborate with a designer. If any collection sums up Mugler's silhouettes, imagination, creativity, and design genius, it is definitely spring 1992, and I urge you all to watch it in its entirety if you can find the time. Fall-Winter 1995. For Mugler's 20th anniversary collection, he made sure to spare no expenses or extravagance. His Fall-Winter 1995 Couture collection is another one chock full of pure Mugler brilliance. This hour-long art and fashion event was finished off with a James Brown concert. I'll quote another wonderful article on the show from Hero magazine, which describes the collection itself infused couture construction with a hint of sex appeal. From ball gowns with buttock cutouts to lashings of black latex, Mugler's fetish-inspired looks show up a couture industry previously known for demure, low-key presentations. Alongside other couture giants like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Victor and Rolf, and Martin Margiela, whose artisanal line was made entirely from found objects, Mugler was instrumental in the couture revolution of the 1990s. Subtly, Mugler's casting also rallied against ageism and fat phobia. There was no blueprint when it came to choosing the personalities that would bring his collections to life, only a focus on charisma and an innate sense of glamour. In his eyes, anyone could become a living, breathing embodiment of heightened perfection, and this focus on personality amped up industry fascination with supermodels, giving them minutes instead of seconds to captivate their audiences. The most important look from the whole show was this metal cyborg suit with clear cutouts to reveal glimpses of human skin, and all played out in a robotic striptease. This theatrical performance was one of dozens that perfectly encapsulate the over-the-topness of Mugler in the 90s. Spring-Summer 1995. I want to talk about another important look from Mugler's Spring-Summer 1995 show, the Venus dress. This is an incredible gown inspired by Botticelli's famous Birth of Venus painting from the 1480s during the Italian Renaissance. The gown is made to represent a shell with a black exterior and pink satin interior to let the model bloom from it, literally, doused in luxurious pearls and long silk gloves. This piece is extraordinarily recognizable after Cardi B wore it again to the 2019 Grammys, styled in the exact same manner as the original runway. The final look I'd like to go into is the Aquatic Fishtail corseted gown from Fall/Winter 1997. This was another collaboration with Mr. Pearl and took an unbelievable 6 weeks, 24 hours a day, from 2 separate night and day teams to complete. The couture piece had a rainbow collection of scales and a structured scale corset to mimic aquatic creatures, and featured a feathered headpiece and sleeve design with ghostly white and reptilian makeup to match. This is another wild example of the attention to detail and extent of Mugler's ambition in couture. All of the collections or looks I've discussed are from Mugler's couture in the 90s and have all been featured in museums and Mugler-specific curated exhibits worldwide. I encourage you all, as I wrap up this video, to explore more of his work in the 80s and hunt for steals at consignment stores and online if you would like to own a piece of Mugler's magic. You may have noticed the camera quality has changed a bit from my last videos, as I'm no longer recording on my iPhone and has actually moved to like a full 4K system. I only have like a really tight 50mm lens, but I'm going to be working on getting a wider lens so that we can go back to like the normal format that you guys see. But let me know what you think of this. Besides that, please like, subscribe, comment any other designers you want to see me go into, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.